So other than showing you the world's worst hand-drawn Venn diagram, I want to talk about ML solutions through the project management lens of good, fast, and cheap. You get to pick two. And the tie into this is the previous video on the cloud, because I think it opens up some really interesting options for companies in the fast and cheap quadrant. So let's just walk through this, because that tie-in may not be immediately obvious. I don't want to step through it. So basically, look, first of all, we're always starting with business problems or business opportunities. We suspect computational quantitative techniques will solve them, optimize, or transform. And then we're going to think, okay, now we're at the stage of how do we allocate compute resources so we can apply our technique so we can solve a business problem. Now, at the top end, you can always come talk to like vendors like Continual or consultants. We're going to be good and fast. So meaning you're going to pay some money and we're going to do a good job because we do this all the time. We're going to do it fairly quickly. The other end would be, and I know the sales reps out there are going to scream, but I'll say the kind of the good and cheap is you use your company's internal developers, and they're like, no, the build is always more expensive. I get it, but from the lens of the person who is the manager with some team of N number of people, that's a relatively fixed cost. You assigning them some tasks, whether it's sitting in Slack all day or it's building an ML system or building an ML project, that's going to be fixed to you. There will be no additional incremental cost, relatively speaking. So I'm going to call that one good and cheap. The fast and cheap section, or the fast, cheap, and low hassle section, is where I think the cloud becomes really interesting, because here's the opportunity that's now afforded to all of us. We can go to one of these cloud providers, whether it's our on-prem cloud or a public cloud like an AWS, Azure, GCP. We can get access to a variety of different servers. This is why I'm tying back to that server model. Those are both compute instances and software that's been written to help us do certain things. So we get to decide based on our level of technical ability and how much hassle we want to take on. We should almost change this to level of hassle, if you will. Although it screws up over here, so I won't do that. But we can say now, for example, let's use Amazon as an example, or AWS. If I have a relatively technical team, I'm willing to take on some hassle, I can say, great, I can relatively inexpensively provision a significant amount of compute by asking for EC2 instances from AWS. I can asking for virtual servers. On the other end of the spectrum, if I have a very low tolerance and threshold for this for hassle and a very low technical bar, or a much significantly lower technical threshold, then I could say, hey, I'm going to go to Amazon SageMaker. I'm going to ask for a bespoke service like one of their translation services. It does need to be context dependent. I'm limiting my options here, of course. I have to use the services provided, but I can say if for example, instead of building my own translation model, I can go to Amazon SageMaker and just use theirs. My costs will go up as the project expands, but I can do quick and dirty things relatively easily. Now, I'm not here to shill for AWS or any other cloud, but when you're thinking about ML projects, again, if you're starting with business problem, we have these techniques we want to apply. Now we're thinking about allocating compute resources, at least in that part of the equation. Getting a basic model or getting something up and running, testing this out, seeing if you can impact that business metric with something in the cloud is a really nice lever. It's a quick sandbox. And it will often make your discussions with vendors a lot easier, because you'll be able to show us, hey, look, here's the baseline I got. Now, can you improve on that? And if you can, then maybe we'll discuss if your fee is worth it. But if you can't, I'm going to go with this solution. It gives you a much stronger bargaining position versus the fact that, hey, I haven't delivered anything. I have a deadline. I have to get something done. Okay, vendor, how do we get this done, according to my budget, but also my timeline? Not that we're going to twist your arm or anything like that, but,